Psalm 82 is almost certainly written the latest of the four that we're looking at today. That's why I've put it here, although the timing of it is still uncertain. And it's not the most uplifting of all the Psalms, but just chronologically, it's most likely the latest one. So that's why I put it here. It's attributed to Asaph, and Asaph is also kind of a name that gets attributed to kind of the sons of Asaph, like the sons of Korah. It's like, again, a segment of the priesthood that is a spiritual lineage that Psalms of Asaph extended well into Israel's exile and the restoration, the post-exile as well, which we'll look at. We'll look at a Psalm of Asaph from after Babylon. So I don't know. This could be one of those, actually. This actually could be one of those. Maybe. But I'm going to put it here because we're a little bit uncertain. And then maybe we'll reference it later when we get to post-exile prophecy. Asaph describes God's deposition against corrupt angels and those who follow them. God uses Israel's Messiah to defeat these demonic leaders who oppose his covenant. Let's jump in at verse 1. God has taken his place of divine counsel. Okay, let's just stop there. I mean, I just want to stop and just meditate on these for weeks. I know I need to move on. For the sake of time, we'll move on. But just how beautiful is that? We're going to have lots to talk about the divine counsel in later biblical prophecies. Think of Daniel 7. Think of Revelation 5. Oh my goodness. We're going to have so much fun. But here it is. We're talking about the divine counsel. God has taken his place at the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he upholds judgment. Who are these gods? Well, generally, scholars do interpret this to mean heavenly beings, lesser heavenly beings, like fallen angels. Could be angels and could be fallen angels. We'll talk about why it's fallen angels. We'll see it, obviously, here in a moment. But it really seems like he's talking in some sort of group of heavenly bodies, whether they're principalities or powers or whatever you want to call them. But this is not just human rulers. This is some kind of angelic thing that's happening. But categorically, what he's going to reference here is the offspring of Satan from Genesis 3. Genesis 3, we get this offspring of Satan, those who are going to be given to opposing the covenant, buying into Satan's deception to oppose the covenant. These are heavenly beings who are in that category of offspring of Satan. And so God confronts the injustice of this demonic corruption. Look at verses 2 and 3. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Now, showing partiality to the wicked involves not just tolerating wickedness, but rewarding and celebrating wickedness, incentivizing wickedness. Demonic leadership systematizes and incentivizes, say that right, the exploitation of the poor. It's truly evil. It's truly evil. That's what's in view here. And then he says, give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. I mean, it's this appeal for justice, but it's to no avail. Now, this is a great also flip, kind of description of leadership that God does call excellent, as good leadership is in view here. That good leaders and no more than the Messiah himself will give justice to the weak and the fatherless and maintain the right of the afflicted, even though he's making this appeal to the divine council at that time. This really is a description of his perfect leadership. Say that again, of his perfect leadership. Rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. So even while we've got this wicked, corrupt, demonic powers trying to show partiality to the wicked, we have also the mission of the righteous, of those who follow the Messiah, to counter that, to deliver the vulnerable from the hand of the wicked. We've got both of those kind of competing agendas unfolding. Verse 5, they have neither knowledge nor understanding. Let me make sure you can see that. And I'll go ahead and They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. What does that mean? Some scholars suggest that these lesser divine beings bore responsibility for tangible, natural ecosystem. And their corruption actually disrupted the natural order. It's part of why we have fallen creation. Later prophets describe the devastation of whole climates as corrupt leaders cooperate with demonic agendas for personal gain. Now, I'm unaware of any scholars who suggest that fallen angels can devastate creation independent from human cooperation. There's a human element of cooperation involved. We don't just have demons running willy-nilly, just initiating natural catastrophe on their own. I haven't seen any scholars who have drawn that conclusion from this. The prophetic emphasis belongs to the consequences of demonically deceived leaders who willingly cooperate with demonic agendas of personal ambition. I do want to just clarify, I don't think I would suggest that any natural disaster is the direct result of demonic influence. I have a hard time claiming that with certainty. I do think that there is fallen natural systems as a consequence of sin that are just the consequence of natural degradation of creation that is awaiting the restoration when Jesus returns. I think some of that natural disaster stuff is just the consequences of living in a fallen world that needs redemption. I don't know if there's a specific finger of some demon moving an earthquake or a storm or anything like that. I do think, though, that there are some real specific devastations of creation that happen as a consequence of sin, the sin of humans, not the sin of angels, but the sin of humans. When humans cooperate with demonic agendas and live in agreement with that demonic corruption, there is sin that pollutes the land, and there are consequences on that land. I do believe that's real. So anyway, I haven't done a super in-depth study. I'm kind of unpacking a tangent. So let's leave it at that. But because there's not much more than that in view here in Psalm 82. But anyway, let's get back to it. Psalm 82. I think the emphasis here is that the consequences of demonically deceived leadership that willingly on earth, a human leadership that willingly cooperate with demonic agendas for personal ambition. That's why James says in James chapter 3 that wherever there's personal ambition, basically you reap destruction. So we'll look at that in a later. And then you have verses 6 and 7 are God's lament. Literally, God is sorrowful and expressing his judgment. God laments the necessary destruction of the corrupt angels and decrees their destruction will match that of sinful humanity. He says, "You are gods, sons of the Most High." And this is language that's more commonly attributed to angels, not really human leaders. These are angels of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men shall you die. That's why there's this kind of comparison, this contrast of you are angels, but like men you die, you'll perish and fall like any common human prince. And I do think that there's sorrow in that. There's the decree of judgment, but there's also, I think, sorrow in you're gods, you're sons of the Most High. This wasn't God's intention for their destiny, but this is what they chose. And this is their fallen nature that has inherited destruction. And then Asaph breaks out in this prayer. Arise, O God, judge the earth. Asaph breaks out like, God, let's do this. We need to judge this corruption, this exploitation of the poor. Here it is. I mean, Asaph sees this, showing partiality to the wicked, that the wicked are exploiting the vulnerable. I mean, this needs to be corrected. This really needs to be corrected. And that's what Asaph is praying for. God, arise, judge the earth, judge the exploitation of the poor, remove the wicked who are doing these things. For you shall inherit all the nation. Asaph prays for that moment, that time when the messianic age where God does literally inherit the nation. Amen.